So it's 1st of November 2021. I'm Vicky Morris with David Bamber.
Hello.
Hello. And we're doing CAVA Unit 1, and this is Learning Outcome 2, understand different types of assessment method. And it's 2.1, compare the strengths and limitations of a range of assessment methods with reference to the needs of individual learners.
I chose ones that I use specifically. So I've kind of the first one I've got is an assignment. So I suppose from an assignment, I would imagine that to be a written document. So strengths that I've got down for this are that it allows for the learner to be very specific about what they want to cover. It allows for some really detailed self-guided research. It gives the ability to plan and structure, and with that, it also gives the ability to review and edit the process. So you can go back and add to certain sections and obviously give more in-depth knowledge as you go through the process. It also helps support sort of written skills. So obviously within the writing, it gives the opportunity to sort of help those kind of written skills. And, from my perspective within a digital marketer, it helps that written communication, especially within a marketing environment. You've got to do a lot of internal communications, a lot of external communications. So it really helps support those ability to write sort of concisely or write succinctly. It allows you to evidence with a greater depth of knowledge. It just allows you to go into specific areas with a lot of knowledge. It also allows you to make reference to other bodies of work. So again, it also allows you to work with, coming on to my next one is case studies, but it also allows you to refer to other pieces of work. So it allows you to reference case studies or other pieces of work within that framework. And it also allows for both written and visual evidence. So it also allows you to put images, pictures, any sort of elements of that, screenshots. So any type of visual evidence as well as written evidence. So that's my list of strengths. For limitations, I put it can certain learners, and this is from my experience, especially if they've maybe been out of learning for a little period of time, that they don't quite understand the requirements of the assignment format. So it's making sure that they might not know exactly what they need to do, and so obviously it requires a certain amount of additional communication from the assessor to make sure that the length and breadth and the detail of the assignment is required. But again, for some learners, understanding exactly what's required of them can be challenging, especially if they haven't been producing assignments for a bit of time. It can be a more independent rather than a group activity, which means it can be sort of isolated learning. And for some learners, that might be tricky for them. They might struggle to concentrate or actually, struggle with that sort of independent learning. It can be difficult to gain assessor feedback during the process. So again, this is kind of linking to one of the first elements, sort of understanding the format, making sure that you're giving the right level of depth that as a learner could be tricky. So again, it's getting that reassurance, which isn't always necessarily ready available when you're maybe working from home or working independently. It may need to be supported with other learning methods. So again, it might require an additional professional discussion or an observation. So sometimes an assignment can cover certain elements of assessment criteria, but it may need to be just again, I said it's very good at supporting written skills, but other kind of sort of communication skills. So again, if it's about, so again, going back to digital marketing, there's a lot of the with whom that we have to cover. So it's about how the learner communicates with the team and with clients or other stakeholders. So sometimes that might not be, you might not be able to cover all of that criteria within an assignment, so you might have to back it up with a professional discussion or an observation or something like that. So sometimes it doesn't quite fulfill all of the criteria within itself, and you might need to back it up with other learning methods. It can cause difficulties for those who lack confidence with their written work. So again, people who are more creative or more sort of visual learners, actually having to sort of do a sort of a more written based format can struggle with that type of thing, and it might not bring the best out in them. They like to be a bit more visual. Though with an assignment, from my perspective, it is a combination of visuals and written work. So again, it's just making sure that that's communicated. And again, it's difficult to evidence sort of practical skills and behaviours. So again, any type of practical skills, again, just going back to one of the other points, you might need to back it up with a different type of learning method. So again, assignments are great, but they often, especially within when you're trying to get skills and behaviours in from an apprenticeship perspective, can be limited in its function. So that's one. If that's all right. Case studies is my second one. So again, it's very good for self-guided research. So it gets learners to do research into particular areas. It can be sort of in-depth evidence of real-life scenarios. So from my perspective, case studies are great to show how marketing can be effective or it can cause issues. So again, some marketing might have a negative effect, but obviously case studies are fantastic because you can show how organizations have dealt with particular marketing scenarios in lots of different areas. So you can go from social media to reputational issues. So it's very good opportunity to get a lot of sort of real life scenarios out there and how companies have dealt with these things. It can be very specific criteria, so it can help you with very specific criteria. So examples of how other organisations have put things into practice. So it can be very good at sort of giving areas that cover very specific criteria of practical issues. Again, it can be good at bringing to light new insights. So again, with certain parts of, again, digital marketing, in my instance, as an example, people come at certain criteria with certain assumptions, and actually when you go through case studies, it can bring new insights as to how to deal with certain marketing issues in this instance, and how to approach things in different ways. So it can bring a lot of new insight into the learning. And actually, with that also, it can help to contradict established ideas and theories. So it can be very good at kind of showing creativity and how to approach certain areas in a different way, and actually back that up with real life evidence. So again, that kind of sort of going back to sort of real life scenarios. So from a limitations perspective, from an assessor's perspective, it can be difficult to find examples, and from a learner's experience, it can also be difficult to find examples. So again, there are lots and lots of case studies out there, but if you're looking for a very specific criteria within a specific field of marketing, sometimes it can be struggle to get the right examples. They can be subject to kind of errors and inaccuracies as to how they've been. So again, it's getting the right sources for the right case studies. So again, that's down to the assessor having a good bank of case studies to use as examples, and or giving learners the right direction to research their case studies and examples. They can be time I've put time specific, but they can be limited around a certain time. So after a period of time, they run out of relevancy. Again, especially within marketing and digital marketing, you know, technology is moving quite quickly. So, you know, a marketing that happened 10 years ago is now out of date, and some of the practices and theories around that, which were particularly good at the time, are now out of date. So actually, you know, it can go out of date quite quickly. And actually also the case studies can be open to bias from both the learner and the assessor. So again, it's about making sure that when you looking at case studies, that you are getting all of the information and getting it from a credible source, so that actually there isn't sort of some bias from, you know, again, if you're looking at a case study that's, you know, maybe from a few years ago, looking at it from the lens of the time that it happened, and not looking at it from the current, you know, the current scenario where, you know, technologies have changed, or certain approaches to marketing in this instance have changed. So there can be some sort of bias and inaccuracies in there. So that's my strengths and limitations on case studies. So again, case studies actually. Case studies can be a really good group activity as well. So again, with a case study, it allows, this is another strength that I'd sort of added in here, but I'd just not got it in my notes. Sorry. Actually, it can be a really valuable group activity, because again, each learner will come at it from a slightly different angle, and again, with group discussions, and if you've got a case study as a group activity, it can be really valuable, because actually it can allow learners to bring it to life, and each learner might sort of gain something slightly different from it. So it can be a very valuable group activity. So 3, moving on to professional discussions. So a professional discussion, it can allow for careful planning and structure. So again, from an assessment perspective, it can be good to see how someone's planned and structured their professional discussion, as well as being able to see certain other aspects of the sort of discussion process, the assessment process. It can be very good at including behaviours. It shows how professional you can be, the way you communicate, and again, lots of those behaviours that you can include around that, about communication skills, about the use of technology within professional discussions. So again, professional discussions can use lots of different areas of technology. Again, we're doing it today over Teams, which is a great deal. It can be done face to face. It can be done in lots of different environments. So again, it can also sort of go over lots of areas of technology. It can clearly cover sort of verbal, oral communication skills. So again, within a lot of, well, certainly within the digital marketing standard, there are lots of criteria about verbal and oral communication skills. So again, it can be very good at doing that. It can be highly flexible. So actually, even though it could be prepared and carefully planned, actually when the assessor sees the opportunity to maybe cover off certain other criteria, or to allow you to be able to sort of do something slightly different within the scope of your assessment, you can actually be quite flexible within the professional discussion. That can be from a learner and an assessor perspective. It can also allow for self-reflection. So again, it allows you to be able to sort of go through a process sort of orally or verbally, and then be able to sort of reflect on how you think it's gone. So it can also be a very good, and again, that self-reflection can also be quite sort of real time as well. So again, you can be sort of reflecting in real time. And it can be, again, I suppose this comes back to being flexible, but it can be adapted throughout the process for additional depth for certain areas. So again, even though it might have been really well planned and really well structured, actually it might be that you just need a little bit of extra depth around certain areas. So the assessor can, either during the professional discussion or at the end, just gain a little bit more depth around certain areas just to make sure that you've covered off a certain assessment criteria. So going on to limitations, can be subject to nerves, can be subject to, again, a professional discussion. Not all of us are comfortable in these situations, and it can be subject to nerves. So again, that can limit the amount of evidence that you get. So obviously, what you want to do is get that real strong sort of verbal or sort of that the sort of oral communication across, and if there are nerves or any problems around that, it could sort of limit some of the evidence you get. It's subject to being recorded carefully. So again, you need to make sure that actually, if it's being recorded, that the equipment works properly, that actually you're getting a recording, so that actually, if you are taking that professional discussion at a particular time around a particular topic, and it's almost not a one-off, but actually that there are, an ideal scenario to get that particular evidence, and the recording equipment fails, or there's some issues with the technical equipment, then that could also be a problem capturing that evidence, and having to recreate that sometimes can be a bit of an issue. Also, it can be very specific to the assessor's judgment. So again, as an assessor, you need to make sure that actually you're making sure that you're getting the right level of evidence. So again, if a learner is nervous or isn't communicating particularly well, however, they might be getting across sufficient evidence for the assessment criteria, sometimes an assessor might feel that it's not quite right. So again, with people's demeanours or behaviours, it's about making sure that you're getting the right judgment, the right area as an assessor. So it can sort of just make sure that you're getting that right judgment within a professional discussion. Can I ask? I've got professional discussions down as kind of one-to-ones, and with group activity, I think group activities is a different one. Is that right? Am I?
Yes. Yeah.
So I would certainly assess a professional discussion as between an individual learner and the assessor, rather than a group discussion.
Yes.
I wasn't sure about that, and I'd sort of looked through, but my reading of a professional discussion is a one-to-one environment.
No, definitely. A group discussion would be more of an observation.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent.
Lovely.
So that's that, and then the last one I've got is presentations. So again, with the presentation, it can showcase your ability to plan and structure a particular piece of activity around assessment criteria. Again, it can include your behaviours. It's again about verbal, oral skills. So again, this is covering a lot of the stuff within professional discussions. But obviously, it can also allow you to provide lots of different evidence resources. So again, with a presentation, again, I suppose at the moment we're used to doing a lot of presentations online, but when you're doing a presentation face-to-face to a group or to a room of people, it can allow you to use lots of different resources, handouts, any sort of visual props or things like that. So it can be a really good way to kind of demonstrate as well as present things. A presentation also allows for some feedback, so it's a really good area to sort of get some sort of feedback from the room as well. Even though a presentation should be able, but at the end of a presentation, it allows for feedback and questioning. It can build confidence and motivation, so it can be very good at helping learners, especially if they're shy. or you know, it's a really good way to help build sort of communication skills and build their sort of presentation skills and motivation. It also helps you develop your understanding of an audience, so it allows you to kind of communicate on a different level, and again, I say, allows for sort of questioning and feedbacks. So again, with a presentation, you know, presentations are in their nature ideally sort of fairly short and sweet about getting the top level, but it also allows for the ability to go into a much more depth with a Q&A at the end. And I know Q&A is slightly different to a presentation, but it allows for a Q&A as well. So it's also not just about that simple presentation. Again, with limitations on a presentation, it can be subject to nerves, can be very, you know, difficult for certain learners to get across what they want to get across if they're quite nervous in that situation. And also that can cause, you know, if it doesn't go particularly well, can lead to sort of you know, other motivational issues as well. Again, it can lead to limiting the evidence that they get across. So even if they've planned it and structured it quite well, you know, if they're a little bit nervous or they're not confident in actually presenting, they might not get the evidence across that you want them to. It can be, again, it's about being recorded properly. So again, making sure that, you know, if it's being filmed or if it's about note taking, it's about making sure that, you know, the equipment's working or that you're taking the right sort of, you know, you're recording that experience as best as possible. And again, I just felt like I was repeating myself from my professional discussion, I'm afraid, on here.
Sometimes it is very similar, so that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So am I right in thinking that you don't really use observation in digital marketing?
We do, yeah, we do some observations, but again, I've been working Creative Alliance. My apprenticeship experience has been pretty much all within lockdown.
Yeah.
So the ability to do observations has been hampered quite a bit. So there's been a lot of occasions where I'd like to have done a lot more observations. However, it's not something that I've done a huge amount of, just due to the nature of how I've been working within apprenticeship. So my experience has been since early 2020. That's how long I've been doing apprenticeship thing, and so obviously it has been hampered quite a bit.
So can you tell me any pros and cons that you're aware of with observations?
Well, obviously observations, the pros of observations are that you can actually see somebody doing something and the depth and level that you're doing that they might not be able to get across in certain other assessment methods. You know, certainly trying to, and again, trying to get it across in an assignment can be quite difficult to explain certain procedures. It's really good for certain learners who are more practically based, and actually they're very hands-on. So actually, sometimes it's far more beneficial for the assessor to actually see them doing it, and actually can see the proficiency of what they're doing. And from my perspective, it's generally working with technology or working within a creative environment, so you can see the level of expertise that they're using, or the limitations that they have, and it's actually really good also to be able to see where they might need any additional training or support. So it shows their strengths, and it also allows you to see their areas where they need improvement. So it allows you to then plan for additional training or support around those things. It allows you to yes, also, you know, within that, potentially see how they interact with others. So again, it can be really good at evidencing behaviours and how they're interacting from that perspective. And it's also good at at seeing how they deal with the equipment to hand as well, and how they can how they can sort of work independently, but potentially also work as a team. and interact with others. Limitations. It's all about recording that observation. So again, it might be that you might not be able to record it on a camera or a video. So actually, it might be difficult to record certain aspects of it. It's about the assessor making sufficient notes in that instance and making sure that you've covered enough notes to cover off the assessment criteria, and making sure that you've recorded that. It can be sometimes difficult to access the observations. Again, with obviously I've highlighted with COVID, it's certainly not been an assessment criteria that I've been able to utilize as much as I wanted to because of certain restrictions. But also, again, now, you know, if certain organizations are dealing with, you know, highly sensitive information, observations might be tricky to manage in those environments because, you know, just you having visibility or having, you know, going through the hoops of signing NDAs or confidentiality contracts and all that sort of stuff might cause problems. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, you know, there are sort of health and safety things and stuff like that, but it doesn't really have a massive impact on my role, really, because it's generally office based and I'm not dealing with sort of factories and stuff. But again, observations in, you know, photographic studios and things like that. Obviously, it's about understanding sort of health and safety. You've got lighting, you've got cameras, you've got props, you've got things like that. You've got lots of wires all over the place. So again, it's making sure that you've had you know, as an assessor, that you've had a full health and safety briefing and you know where you can and can't be within that set and environment. But that doesn't happen hugely, but it can do. So again, there are health and safety areas that you need to be well aware of. And again, that's something that the learner needs to be aware of as well.
Lovely. That's great. Have you anything else to add to that?
Do I need to add anything else to it?
I'm quite happy.
Good.
Lovely. We'll stop the recording then.
Okay.